Hi everyone, many thanks for joining us today to look at a selection of Microsoft Office 365 services that you might not be familiar with. I'm Warren Butler, Marketing Director at Preact, and I'm delighted to be joined by Dougie Wood, Lead Cloud Specialist at Valto IT. The majority of our Microsoft Dynamics 365 clients that we work with also subscribe to Office 365. And while its Outlook, Word and Excel apps are universal, there are other services which aren't so widely used. And in some instances, organizations aren't sure how to best utilize these. So the aim of this session is to increase awareness of the wider capabilities of Office 365. And in doing this, we'll be focusing on three services: Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and also Microsoft Flow, which is the workflow engine for synchronizing files, receiving automatic notifications, and collecting data. To demonstrate how the modern IT workplace is evolving, it's great to have Dougie with us today. And so to get started, let me just throw the presentation across to Dougie. So all yours. Thanks, Dougie.
Thanks for that, Warren. Hi, my name is Dougie Wood. I'm from a business called Valto, and I'm going to be talking to you today about modern SharePoint and Microsoft Teams. So a little introduction about us. Valto are Microsoft Cloud specialists. So we specialize in products such as Office 365, SharePoint, and Azure. I personally am a lead cloud specialist, and I've been working with SharePoint for about 5 or 6 years. And now I focus predominantly on providing solutions with modern SharePoint, SharePoint Online, and using all the tools and products which are available inside Office 365, such as Teams, Flow, and PowerApps, to provide an overall solution for digital transformation. That's me at the bottom right-hand corner, and also we are on social media, so we appreciate it if you follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. So what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about modern SharePoint, so how that looks and feels different to the sort of classic SharePoint, Microsoft Teams, which is the collaboration tool, Flow, which is business automations, and PowerApps for mobile development. So I'm going to dive straight into it, and we're going to have a little look at SharePoint. So from your Office 365 portal when you first log in, a lot of people think that by just clicking the SharePoint tile, that this is actually going to bring you to what is SharePoint. However, when you actually click on it, what you see is not a sort of necessarily a home page or an intranet. This is actually SharePoint's navigational page. So this is what you will see when you first click on that tile. But essentially, it's going to show you a roll-up of all the data you have access to throughout all the different SharePoint sites. So it's going to show me things like news articles that have been created, so articles, say, for like new starters or new products. Some frequent sites that I visit, so frequent sites that I'm obviously visiting are customer-related sites. Valto management and marketing are all quite common SharePoint sites that I'm visiting. So really, this page is trying to help end users find the content that they're going to be accessing on a daily basis. It's also going to suggest sites, so based on other sites that maybe I'm not using, but my colleagues are using, it's going to suggest that these are the sort of sites that maybe I should be having a look at. Similar on the left-hand side, sites I'm following. So some of my favorite sites that I've marked as following will appear on the top left-hand corner, as well as recent sites that I've recently visited, and featured links are sites which my organization have decided are should be promoted. So that's almost like promoted by my organization. So the three main areas that we're going to be looking at of SharePoint are going to be around intranets, communication, and team sites. So first off, we'll have a look at what a home page of SharePoint will potentially look like. So this is what we refer to as a hub site. This is kind of like the home page of your intranet. So it's got two main purposes. One is information, or communication, I suppose is a better word. And one is and the other is navigation. So it's mainly about communicating news stories, articles, important documents, as well as providing people navigation points to useful documents, as well as external links, internal links, things like that. So this is your hub site. So this would be what your home page would look like. And across the top, we can see what we refer to as top bar navigation. Now, this is going to remain consistent throughout everywhere inside our SharePoint intranet. The reason being is that it's just easy to then use the top bar to bounce around and jump between different areas of your intranet, so you don't get lost and you don't have to come all the way back to the home page to navigate to a different area. On the left-hand side is what we refer to as the quick launch navigation. Now, this will change depending on which site you're on. So this is more links to the current site that you're on. So maybe for the home page, things like the IMS, the documents management, the notebooks and the pages are more relevant. Whereas on other sites, you might see that those will change to be other links relevant to the site you're currently on. So our homepage typically consists of what we refer to as the hero web part at the top, which is designed to be really easy and simple to change for a sort of an admin or an administrator of the site. So we can easily change the background images, the text, where they link to, and even the position of where they sit. So just by putting the page into edit mode, I can really simply drag and drop these tiles around and move them into an order that I prefer. So if I wanted it at the top right corner rather than top left, I can just move that around, click publish, and then that's saved and ready for everyone to view. So it's really simple, really easy to update. Further down on our hub site, we've got things like the news. So as just an example that I had created yesterday, but it's really simple, really easy to create a new news article. All we need to do is click on the add button. And we can either select a news link. So maybe we've seen an article on bbc.co.uk or another third-party website that we just want a link to from our news system. We can just provide a URL for that. If we wanted to create our own internal news, we click on News Post. We just need to give it a title. We can select a background image by choosing image in here. And let's just select one we've previously uploaded, or we could have actually selected a new image to upload. We set a focal point, so the image where we want it to best sit. So I think that looks best like that. And then we can add multiple types of information into our article. By default, it's going to suggest the top featured types of information we can include. So things like text, images, maybe we want to embed a specific document or a link somewhere else. But there are plenty of other things we can include, maps, embeds of Facebook and forms, people information, Twitter, weather. There's a whole host of different information that we can post inside of here. And this not only is for news articles, it's the same for any SharePoint page that we create. We can plug this type of information into any of our pages. So once we've just put in some text into our article, we can simply click on the publish button, and this is going to take us back to the home page, and we can see that our news article is published for everyone to see, and they can click through and find and see the full article in more detail. Other web parts that we can add onto our homepage includes things like weather, which we can customize to the location of our, say, head office, for example. We can also add in embeds for social media, so things like Twitter, Yammer, all those kinds of things, as well as showing sort of dynamically some documents which are being worked on around the intranet. So as long as I've got access to these documents, I can see the sort of documents that other employees of the business are currently working on. And at the bottom of the page, I can see links to all the departmental or team sites that are throughout the business. We'll come back to what team sites are more further down the line. So that's our hub site. So our hub site, just to recap, is for giving general communication and navigation to other parts of our intranet. It is our intranet homepage. Other sites are then connected to this site, and they'll do things like inherit their branding, it'll inherit the top navigation bar, and some other additional features that it will inherit. So essentially, we connect other sites to our hub site or our homepage, and then things like news and information like what documents are being worked on will all get pushed and rolled up into our hub site. The second type of site that we could potentially have is what's referred to as a communication site. Now, this communication site isn't really for document management or collaboration. It's more really for pushing out communication information about a certain topic. So this is a communication site which is for product information. So maybe this is for a manufacturing company of furniture, and they've got new product ranges, and they want to just kind of keep their staff, their internal employees, up to date on what new products are coming out in a really nice, stylish, simplistic way. We can include things like image gallery so they can see what the latest products are that are coming out throughout the business. But essentially, this is just for pushing out information in a really nice, structured, clean, crisp kind of looking way. And then our third type of site is what's referred to as a team site. So a team site is what is created for maybe individual departments, individual teams, or projects. But essentially what is created is a lightweight SharePoint site, which has got things like, if you wanted to use it, news, which can roll up into your hub site. You can have quick links on here for useful links for that particular team, activity about what that team has been up to. But generally it's a document storage area for that team. Along with that team, you also get what's referred to, along with the team site, you also get a Microsoft team, which is the sort of chat room functionality. Now, we can view that through the Office 365 web interface, or we can download a Teams app, which actually looks like this. We'll then see all of the teams that we're a part of on the left-hand side. By default, all of the teams will have a channel called General. And now a channel is kind of like a chat room within the team. So you might have multiple different chat rooms which everyone has access to, but maybe the theme's slightly different. So maybe it's a channel per customer that team works with. Maybe it's a channel per project that team's working on, just so they can split out their communications as well as their documents into different silos or different categories. So inside of our team chat, we can see we've got a bit of a feed in here of information we've been talking about. So we can post directly into the team if we wanted to. But no one's going to get notified about this. This is just a message that's inside of our teams. If we wanted to notify an individual user, we can @ them and start looking up their name. And that then would give them a notification. A little pop-up would appear in their activity to say, Dougie Wood's now tagged you in this post, please come have a look, sort of thing. We can also symbol, if we wanted to get the attention of the entire team, we can use the @ tag of the entire department. And everyone will get notified by this. We can also see we've got a nice little symbol here which shows that everyone's been tagged in this. So visually just scrolling through our newsfeed, we can see all the different tags. The @ symbol means that I can see here I've been tagged in something. The little 3-person means everyone's tagged in it. And we've also got an exclamation mark for anything which has been tagged as important. So if something's important, it must be red. It will flag up on here. Something that we quite often do internally is we might mark something as important and say, please like this message once you've read it. So it's easy and clear to see who's actually read the message. So to do that, we just click on the like button on the left-hand side, and that gives us a little count of likes as well and shows us exactly who has liked this particular post. We can do things like bookmarking. So if something was really important and you kind of wanted to make sure you could come back to it again, maybe it's a particular document or a link to something that's useful and you wanted to bookmark that to come back to it again, we can bookmark that by saving this message by clicking this here. Other colleagues can then reply to your comment and basically comment back onto it. And of course, that can also be liked as well. All of the documents that we saw before in our team site, so like I was saying before, essentially this Microsoft team is just the front end, the communication channel for a SharePoint team site. So we can view all of our documents in the team site by clicking Open in SharePoint, and we can see all the documents in the web view, which is inside of SharePoint, or we can go into our Teams application, click Files, and we can see all the documents here. If we create any new or upload any new documents through the Teams application, they automatically get uploaded into SharePoint, because technically it's one and the same thing. There's no difference between these documents and the ones that we saw in SharePoint. Once the documents are inside the team, we can then do things like attaching them as a link inside a message. So I can share a link to this. I can tag in one of my employees. And we can then discuss this document directly inside of Teams. So by clicking on the message, click on the document, in fact, it will then show me the document inside of the Teams application. Along with that, I can actually edit it inside Teams. I can choose to edit it in my Word application, or I can choose to edit it in Word Online. Now, if I choose to edit it at any time and one of my other colleagues decides that he's going to join, I'll get a little message, and I'll see a symbol appear to say particular colleague has joined and is editing, and it's referred to as co-authoring. So I'll be able to see a little tag of where they're editing, and in live time see the text appear. This is really useful and saves a lot of time for documents going backwards and forward via email, and especially for us when we're creating things like proposals or specification documents, and it takes multiple consultants or engineers to take part in that document. Rather than me filling out a little section and then emailing it to a colleague, we can all work on the document at the same time inside of Teams. We can even comment on it, so we can say section 2 looks wrong. And that can then prompt that particular colleague to go and have a look at section 2, update that, and we can collaborate on it and work on it together at the same time. All of our comments are stored against that original post that I made of the document. So we can see that our comments are in here. And that's stored, and we can work on that together until we've got the document into the sort of state that we want it to. Other things you can do, you can obviously use things like emojis, but there's also new things like GIFs and memes as well that you can add into your communications. As well as that, we can use what's known as Meetup or Meet Now, which is video conferencing. So if people have got headsets and webcams, they can do their conference calls through this. Other functionalities of Microsoft Teams is things like direct chat. So not only can we chat directly into our team, but there might be other people around the organization that we want to talk to directly. So that's like instant messaging. Meetings, we can see what meetings we've got coming up and schedule Teams meetings. Calls, this is actually additional license for the voiceover software, but we actually use Teams as our soft phone for throughout Valto. Files is just going to show you all the different files that you've got available to you throughout all your different team sites. And there are other functionalities as well that you can plug in to Teams, so things like automated bots, things like if you're using Planner or specific forms, Excel spreadsheets or anything like that. A lot of third-party things like Salesforce applications, Dynamics 365, all these different plugins can go as tabs across the top of your team, essentially meaning that Teams eventually will become like a one-stop shop for all of your business day-to-day applications and software that you're using. You'll kind of just go through Teams and be able to access all your documents, all your communications, whether it's via text or phone, and get all the sort of applications and services you usually would, but it'll all be under one roof. So that is Microsoft Teams. Just going back now into our page. So that's covered off the Teams areas. The other bit that I forgot to mention was the SharePoint document management. Now, just conscious of time, I just want to quickly run over this. inside SharePoint, it's not just storing documents, but there's a whole host of document management functionality within here as well. So not only can we host the documents inside here, we can also tag them with what we refer to as metadata. Now, metadata just means data about data or information about your document. So we can tag it with things like and these can be custom named as well, but things like approval dates, so when was a document approved, review dates. So this is our IMS system, or QMS system, as people call it. And if you're, say, ISO 9001 accredited or 20001, ISO auditors love SharePoint because everything has got an audit trail of who did what and when, version history, so we can see when things have changed. If we wanted to, we could revert back to a previous date of a document. If we realized it had gone pear-shaped, but we knew it was fine 2 weeks ago, we can revert the document back. As well as these additional metadata tags we're talking about, we can tag things with like approval dates, when is it due for a review, how often should it be reviewed, who is the reviewer, who is the approver, who is the process owner, and so on. There's all these different tags. And this fits in nicely with what I was going to come on to next, which is Microsoft Flow. So with things like Microsoft Flow, I'll show an example in a moment, we can automate this this kind of approval process. So once we've got, say, a review date, we can trigger automated processes to email who the reviewer is on this date to say, please come review this document, it's past its expiry date. They can make updates to it once they're happy. An email goes to the approver. Once the approver is happy and they've approved it, the approval date gets updated, the review date gets updated based on the frequency. So say if it was a year from now, it would be set to the 25th of October 2019, if it was approved today, for example. And that's how that process kind of just runs. So we can use Flow to automate that kind of process. Just to show you how Flow kind of is set up, this is a very simplistic, very basic flow, which has just got the sort of core elements in it that I just wanted to show you. So within here, this is a very basic, say, document approval process. So how a flow runs is that you would always have a trigger for your flow. So you always need something that starts it. And this is usually something like if this happens or when this happens. So when an item is created, when an item is deleted, when someone uploads something, or when someone modifies something, for example. These are all types of triggers. So when something happens, an action happens, this will then be triggered. So once it's triggered, it then goes to either an action or a condition. So an action is something like, in this case, we're starting an approval. So the action is to send an email to the approver to say, is it approved or not? It will then pause until it gets a response. And then we've got what we refer to as a condition. So a condition is always kind of something like, if this, then that. So if the condition, in this case, is the response, if it's equal to approve, that means that this is true and it's yes. So we say, if yes, this is what happens. So if they approve, this is what happens. If it's anything other than approve, it's obviously rejected. So it will then go down this column, if no, and it's rejected. So if it's approved, we trigger another action, which is to send an email. So we're informing the creator of the document that it's been approved. And then we've got this kind of dynamic box where we know exactly from our SharePoint list who originally submitted the document. The title of the document, so this might say item document 1 has been approved, and then we've got our body of our email. Again, it's dynamic, so it's say your request for document 1 has been approved by, and then it's got the approver's name that we specified in the SharePoint list, comments if any. So if any comments were provided during the process, these would be captured inside of this list. But there's literally a whole host of different triggers that can trigger flows. There's a whole bunch of actions which you can use. So I'll just quickly show you some additional actions that we may want to add once they've loaded up. So let's just have a look. It does split it out into standard and premium, but that just comes down to the different sort of licensing types, what's sort of included inside of here. But there's a whole host of different actions that we can add. So here's one that I just started up before. So there's all sorts of things you can use. You can connect to Facebook, Twitter, all sorts of third-party applications. Every single product inside of Office 365 you can connect to in some way. So if it was related to an email that comes into a shared mailbox, you might want to use something like some of the actions for Dynamics 365. So a trigger might be when an email comes into a shared mailbox, you want to create a record automatically inside Dynamics 365, start populating some of the content of that record inside of there, so that your sales guys maybe get informed that there's a new lead and so on. So it all just forms part of the overall automation parts of your system. If you wanted to just have a little go of Flow and sort of get up to speed and have a little look at what sort of things you can use, I recommend having a little look at the Flow templates, which are available inside of Office 365. You just need to go to office.com, so your Office portal, click on Flow, and then click on the templates option across the top, and then you'll see all these different templates. And there's literally thousands, and they connect with literally all different types of resources, applications that you can kind of think of: Power BI, Google Docs, Forms, OneDrive, SharePoint, all these different things that it can connect to. And now these templates might not do 100% of what you want to do, but you can always configure these templates to do exactly what you want to do. And some of them may seem a little bit pointless in terms of what the actual template is. So for example, a top used one here is Get Togethers weather forecast for my current location. Now you might say, well, I could just look out the window and have a look at what the weather is doing. However, this particular template may be only 80% of the overall flow that you build. Say, for example, if your organization does a lot of work outside, so maybe your construction or surveying or something like that, landscaping, you could use this flow at 7 o'clock every morning. It emails all of your staff to say, this is what the weather forecast is. And depending on what the weather forecast is, you might say recommend to bring an umbrella or change of shoes or something like that. So it's just feeding that extra level of information into your business, which may make your end sort of workforce a little bit happier, a little bit more enlightened to sort of a bit more information. So that is Flow. And again, just have a little look over the sort of templates and get familiarized with what Flow can potentially do. The next topic that I want to go on to is PowerApps. So again, this is a product inside of Office 365. Now, PowerApps is more for lightweight development. It's for mobile applications. So it's apps which are designed, although you can use them on your computer, your desktop, your laptops, they're more really specifically for use on tablets and use on mobile phones. So they may replace things like forms. So say, for example, your sales guys are going out and collecting information and by writing down forms on pieces of paper, and then they've got to scan those in and email them. There's a whole manual kind of process, and you want to digitally transform that process. PowerApps is exactly the sort of thing that you want to use. This is an example of a Power App that we have built, and inside this Power App, the idea of it is it's visitor registration. So it may necessarily replace the need for having someone on your front desk in reception. This was designed so it would go on a tablet. So, for example, like an Android tablet or something like that. Where it's then placed onto a desk. So you've got your iPad or your tablet, and it's then on the front desk in your reception. When visitors come in, they can come in, click on check-in. They would then see a form to fill out. So it's these fields as well can be customized, and we can add in any additional information you wanted to. We've also customized it in ways before where there's been videos that people must watch before that they can sign in, or maybe there's a safety policy or something like that that they must read and sort of sign that they've said they read this before they can sign in. Other default things we can add as well is person who they're visiting. So once they click that submit button, it'll send a picture of them and their name to whoever they're visiting. So before that person comes out to sort of greet them, they can actually say who it is and who is come to visit them. And they also get that notification as well. So rather than a receptionist having to ring through to say your guest is here, they can get an automated email which comes through to that as well. So once they've clicked submit, it takes a photo of them. That's them signed in. Now, additional applications that we have built out the back of this is an employee sign-in application. So it works in pretty much exactly the same way, where we're capturing information of people who are working on site and they need to sort of clock in and clock out. This can be probably most of the times it's streamlined. So rather than them filling out their name in a text box every single time, it's either maybe they scan like a QR code, which the app recognizes who they are straight away, or maybe they have like a little, in smaller offices, maybe where they say between 20 and 50 people, maybe there's a grid of pictures and they just tap on their picture and that then signs them in and so forth. And then once they're all signed in, another application that we have since built is a fire safety application. So we've collected all this data and we know exactly who's on site, when they signed in and when they signed out. So we can then build another app, which is the fire safety, which is if there was ever a fire and everyone needs to be evacuated from the building to a fire safety checkpoint, someone who has then got, say, a tablet can open that application and see exactly who was in the building, both visitors and employees, and then mark them off as safe once they're outside the building. So similar to almost like what the Facebook does in a sort of disaster, and you can mark yourself as safe. You can use the application to tick off and see who is in the safety checkpoint. The other half of this app as well, which I forgot to mention, is checking out. So obviously once people come to check out, they can select who they are. And then choose, they could edit their details as well. That's another recent functionality we've added. So for example, if somebody didn't have their contact details correct at the time, they could edit that to make sure that they've got their contact details in the future checked. Also, for sort of GDPR related reasons, someone's recently asked that we add a checkbox to say whether it's okay if we store this information or not. And if they don't choose that so you can store their information, it will automatically wipe every trace of their visit and their details off of the system automatically. But then they can select who they are and click checkout, which will knock them off the checkout list. So other examples of PowerApps and things like that we've built before. We have built task scanner applications. So like I was saying before, scanning QR codes. So the one we built was for a security firm where they have warehouses and factories that they have to provide security for, but to provide evidence that someone is actually going around and checking very large factories. They hang they hang QR codes on the walls, and then the security guard will have a mobile application, a Power App on their phone, and all they need to do is at certain times of day to prove that they've walked around the building, they scan the code on the wall, and the app knows straight away who they are, the geolocation of exactly where they were when they scanned it, and that proves then that they were where they said they were, and they've sort of scanned that to sort of prove where they were. It's also, the app is geolocated, so even if they took a photo and printed off the QR code and scanned it from somewhere else, the geolocation would realize exactly where they were, provides coordinates, so you can see exactly, very accurately, where they were when they scanned that. This has also been adopted into other kind of uses as well. So things like hotels use this kind of functionality for replacing pieces of paper forms on the back of doors inside toilets when the cleaners have had to clean the toilets at certain times throughout the day. Rather than filling out their name and signing a time, they can just scan it with the Power App on their phone. And this is used by cleaners for like toilets and swimming pools and things like that. So if in any case they need to provide an audit trail of when these things were cleaned or tidied, they can pull out a database of all the times that those QR codes were scanned, and just provides a little bit more information from that. So I've just realised I've run over my time, so apologies for that. I'm now going to hand back to Warren for any questions, any Q&As really. So if you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.
Many thanks, Dougie. Yeah, that concludes the presentation. Do hope you found that useful. It's given you some good ideas and inspiration for how these Office 365 services and the Microsoft Power Platform can be effectively used within your own business. Valto will be happy to arrange a tailored demonstration if you do want to take a look at any of the examples that Dougie featured in the demonstration. And if you want more details, please do get in touch. And Valto can also provide a quote for any Office 365 and certainly SharePoint projects that you might be considering. So we're going to pause for a moment to look at any questions which have come through. But if you are leaving us at this point, many thanks again for your time today, and we hope to see you on a future presentation.